I think that for me, it's kind of like the theme that I teach all the time, which is use your strengths, but just don't overuse your strengths. And the example of that is you take that eagle and they're confident and direct, but if you dial that up too much, you become aggressive and blunt and insensitive. You take the parrot and they're optimistic. You dial it up too much, they're unrealistic. And I think that's true for all of these styles. You've got to use your strengths, but keep them at a healthy level. Don't overuse them or else they get in your way.
So you have a passion for fitness and the desire to start your own business. But launching a massively successful fitness business is extremely complex. The systems, operations, hiring, firing, coaching, sales, and marketing are critical to success. Where do you even start? This show will give you the answers. Here is Bedros Keuilian and Bryce Henson, your hosts of the Fitness Franchise Podcast, a show dedicated to helping fitness entrepreneurs launch and grow successful gyms.
Welcome back, friends. Today is another incredible episode, and I am so pumped up because today's guest co-founded Team Builders Plus in 1991 and Take Flight Learning in 2012, which my whole team has been trained on and we'll get to in the episode. Now, he's the author of Personality Wins, The Chameleon and Taking Flight, 3 books about personality, all while being the CEO of Take Flight Learning. Now, his company has been selected as the New Jersey Business of the Year and named one of the fastest growing companies and best places to work in the Philadelphia area. Now, Merrick received his M.B.A. from Drexel University, who recognized him as the Alumni Entrepreneur of the Year, and he has worked with more than half of the Fortune 100 companies, both in the U.S. and around the world. Merrick Rosenberg, welcome to the show, my friend. I am so excited to have you.
I've been waiting for this one, so it's going to be a blast.
Oh, going to be a lot of fun, and we'll get to it in a bit about how our companies have worked together, how we've trained our whole team on some of the concepts that you and your organization have put forth. And this is the first time we're actually connecting, but before we get into the meat and potatoes, if you'd be so kind to share with our audience the backstory.
Sure. Well, back in 1991, I was working on an M.B.A. and I discovered team building. There were literally just a handful of companies, maybe a half a dozen team building firms at the time. And I thought, wait a minute, you could get paid to play games with companies? Sign me up for that. So you mean I get to teach people how to work together and have fun doing it? So started one of the first team building companies in the United States. And from there, learned about personality styles a few years later and just grew it from that point. And it's been an absolute blast, just going into companies and teaching people how to work together, teaching managers how to lead, teaching people about themselves. Can't beat that.
Beautiful. Well, my biggest interest is Take Flight, just because that's how our organizations have worked together. But before we kind of jump in there and working with team builders and your previous career, connecting with companies and teaching about personality, et cetera, what were the big learning lessons and the value of basically building that company, and then also too some of the big challenges looking back that you probably think, oh wow, that was tough, but I'm glad I went through it, and this is the lesson that I learned.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is don't allow naysayers to get into your brain and tell you, are you sure you want to do this? I remember when we started the company, so many people said to us, are you sure? We went to an accountant to set up a new team building company. And the accountant's like, you just got an M.B.A. Maybe you should go get a good job. We went to talk to an attorney. Same thing. Go get yourself a job. Not one of them was backing us up and saying, you could do this. And you know what? I just knew we could do it. And you've just got to not let those voices get in your head. If you believe that you can do it, then you do it. Don't let other people limit your potential.
Yeah, good on you. Great lesson to take away there. Speaking of your MBA, which is certainly you're a very well-educated guy, and our audience are interested in basically becoming an entrepreneur, potentially opening their own fitness business. Before we kind of jump into your career and the teachings and the training that we're going to get into today, can you share some insights in terms of the value that your MBA brought? And maybe it was value, maybe it wasn't, but I was just curious to kind of pick your brain on how you applied that to what you currently do.
We had an amazing time getting an MBA for me and my business partner. I was working on an MBA focusing on organizational behavior and culture. He was working on his MBA in sales and marketing. I discovered team building. I thought we could do this. Connected with him. I was in a class, maybe a marketing class, and I said, hey, I had a team project and I had to create marketing materials. And I said, hey, what if we create marketing materials for a team building company. He was in a class that was writing a business plan for a new company. And he'd say, hey, what about a team building company? By the time we left that M.B.A. program, we had completely mapped out the entire organization, how we were going to market ourselves, how we were going to grow, what we were going to do. We had the wisdom of so many professors. At the time, we thought it was a little covert, like, do you think they'd be okay if we were using every class to do this? But years later, they discovered that I'd shared this story on a podcast, and years later, they had heard that we had done this, and they awarded both of us, as you read earlier, Alumni Entrepreneurs of the Year, because they liked the fact that we actually used our MBA to start a company. Everything I did there was focused on growing what I have today.
Good on you. So then from a recommendation, if someone's kind of looking in the outside in thinking, do I need an MBA to basically execute my dreams as an entrepreneur? For you, obviously, it was very impactful, but what would you say to the average entrepreneur?
No, I don't necessarily think you need an MBA to start a company. For me, I absolutely used it. But for a lot of people, you don't need to do that. If you have passion, you have vision, you know what you want to create. I think one of the best things I read when I was thinking about starting a company was that the unsuccessful entrepreneur thought that they would be successful. The successful entrepreneur knew it. And I think that was the difference. It's that, I remember a time when I was working on starting the company, and 9 to 5 every day I worked on the company. At nights, I delivered pizza. On the weekends, my parents had a children's clothing store, and I worked at their store. And I was working 7 days a week every single day. And I did that for like about 2 years. I hardly took a day off. And all my friends said to me, what are you, crazy? Come out. Let's go away for the weekend. Let's go out. Let's go see a movie. And I was like, I can't. I'm growing a company. And they were like, you are crazy. Yeah, fast forward 2 years later. And they were all looking at me and saying, you are so lucky that you get to do what you want to do. You just are so lucky. And I'm like, walked into it. I mean, just, it was just easy. And I think that's the deal. You have to accept up front. You are going to spend a lot of time. You're going to put every hat on. You are going to work hard. But later, it's going to pay for itself because you get to love what you do.
Oh, amen to that. Amen to that. Any successful entrepreneur can share that same wisdom. So appreciate that insight there. All right, Merrick, super excited to kind of transition. And maybe before we kind of get into Take Flight, actually, I would imagine Team Builders was kind of a prelude to basically your work at Take Flight. So how did that transition happen? And the reason I'm excited about Take Flight is because, our organizations, and I'll probably, in this podcast, kind of storytell a little bit and kind of give the audience a little insight to how we've applied to our business. But what was that transition like? How did you basically make the transition from Team Builders to Take Flight? And really, what was the big reason behind it?
Yeah, so Team Builders Plus still exists, and we run team building programs all the time. And what happened was we had discovered the personality styles back in 1994. And I thought this is powerful because it's not just understanding yourself, it's understanding how all of those individual personalities make up a team. So we used personality assessments and taught training programs based on the styles as more of a team building program for many years. It wasn't just here's your graph, here's your report. Oh, that's interesting. Look, it's accurate. It tells me about me. We were putting it into action. We were making it fun. It was experiential. It was very hands-on and activity filled. So when we started introducing the birds, which I know we'll talk about here in a moment, I thought, I'm going to infuse the team building world into our work with teaching personality, and let's make it fun. Let's make it colorful. Let's make it engaging. Let's reinvent what is very bland, and quite frankly, most personality profiles, they lack personality, and so does personality styles training, and we just wanted to make it fun because that's where we grew out of. We grew out of being a team building program, and we had 2 rules that we kept applying. Rule number 1, it should be fun and engaging. People should go to training and say, that was awesome. I had a good time. And it should change future behavior. So if you could do both of those, have a great day, and it changes how they interact with others, how they treat people, that's powerful. So I think it came from our team building world, which informed how we're going to run training and teaching personality styles.
Beautiful. Well, Merrick, I can basically acknowledge you that the two action items that you're trying to accomplish, you've delivered in spades. And now I want to transition actually to the birds and whatnot. And to kind of, before I kind of dive in, the reason I'm so excited, and certainly our audience should be as well, and this is what we teach at our franchise Fit Body Bootcamp, primarily, we're not in the fitness business. Primarily, we're not in the health business. Primarily, we're not in the coaching business. Those are all things we do, but primarily we are in the people business. And in order to serve people, you need to know people, and you need to be able to interact with people. You need to lead people. You need to serve people. So this is why this training was just so foundational for us, because here within our franchise at Fit Body Bootcamp and for Fitness Franchise Podcast, all of our audience entrepreneurs getting into the fitness space, you're going to have to work with people. So that's really the value here. We're going to kind of dive into it. But Merrick, share the birds with us, kind of give us the overview, and I know we're going to kind of dive into it as we go.
I'll give you the crash course, the 4 styles. So we've got 4 birds. People taught letters for years, as I did for about 15 years. And I found that I would go in and I would use styles and letters, and you go back 6 months later and people were like, wait, which one is that again? And I'm like, all right, you're killing me. Spent half a day with you and you don't remember it. It had to be more visual. It had to be brought to life. So I linked the 4 styles that have been around for thousands of years to 4 birds. So let's do it. We'll do it together. Picture an eagle. A person has an eagle style. What do you think they would be like?
Eagle would be like free, probably assertive. I guess eagle is like the international freedom symbol, right? So that would be one that the big one I think about. Assertive, direct, forthcoming, probably aggressive to some extent. That's probably not a good,
or at least assertive.
Trait, but these are all the assertive, and these are all kind of probably the handful of things I think of with the eagle. Would that be right?
That's exactly it. I mean, you think of an eagle, they stand tall, they're confident, assertive, direct, take charge. It's all about results, making things happen. And the beautiful thing about the birds was that you don't have to memorize this because it's already intuitive. So let's take a parrot. You picture the parrot, what comes to mind?
Outgoing, fun, festive, connecting, just, the life of the party, if you will.
Yeah, they're not quiet and shy. How about optimist or pessimist? What do you think?
Optimist, yeah,
and you get it. It's like the parrot, it's fun, they're outgoing, they're talkative, just bring tons of energy. So, all right, how about the dove style? When you think of a dove, what do you think about?
Well, I mean, the dove is the international peace symbol, right? So harmonious, working together, kind, caring, empathetic, sympathetic. These are all kind of things.
Yeah, you get it, right? And notice how you think of the style and instantaneously you have a sense of, okay, that's the dove. And that was the challenge, is how can we create something so visual that it's just obvious? And because if you can't identify styles, how are you using them? So how about last one? Owl. How about this? First word that comes to mind when you think of an owl.
Wise would be the first one.
Right, because every cartoon owl ever drawn is pictured as wise. I mean, they're all about that wisdom, right? Yeah, it's the glasses that are the giveaway. What else comes to mind for you?
Yeah. I would say cautious, analytical, kind of introverted a bit, kind of quiet, observing. These are all things when I think of an owl kind of come to mind.
Yeah, they're processing, they're taking it in, they're analyzing. They ask tons of questions. If you have an owl child, probably the biggest question you hear is, but why? Why do we have to do this? And that's the thing about the owls, they need to understand. And so, look, we're not just one of them. We're a combination of all 4 to varying degrees, but there's probably 1 or 2 which are core for you, that are just like you see them all the time, you exhibit those behaviors all the time. And you can do all 4, but the ones that are not as strong probably take some energy.
Oh, totally. Let me ask you this, and I'm just, I already knew this going in, and granted, Merrick, this is the first time we're speaking, even though I've worked with your VP, I've worked with your support staff, we've done a couple trainings with some trainers that you've had in Florida and Vegas and Southern California, so our organization's kind of bought in with Take Flight, but that in mind, what would be your bird profiles, and how does that relate to you specifically in terms of, matching your personality characteristics?
Yeah, for me, I'm a parrot and a secondary eagle. So the eagle part comes out in the business world, running a company. The parrot comes out on stage. I mean, I feel like there are multiple versions of me in alternate timelines. In one of them, there's potentially a stand-up comedian version of me. In another timeline, there's a teacher and someone who helps others. And another one, there's also a musician that wants to show up on stage with a guitar. And so, when I get to go out on stage and talk at conferences, sometimes I bring the ukulele and we all do a fun bird sing-along just because I'm a parrot and it's a fun thing to do. But I get to have fun. I get to make people laugh and I get to teach people about themselves. I think it's what people who love their job will say. I mean, you stand on that, for me, I stand on that stage and I'm like, wow, I get paid to do this. I get paid to have fun with people and teach them about themselves, and it impacts their life. I mean, it's amazing how many stories I get that just people talk about how it's impacted their relationships and them at work and with their kids or their spouse, and you just can't beat that.
Totally. Well, I want to dive into a little bit about application and how, what the big takeaway is from learning your personality style and how to apply it, which was the second point in one of your conversations. Before I do, one of the questions I always ask, because I've also gone through your certification, right? Now I'm discertified to kind of teach this within our brand. We're both my brother Barrett and I, who are kind of lead trainers, if you will. So we kind of went through the course. So I'm kind of lead the witness here. But one of the questions that's asked me was like, Bryce, in a very quick way, how can I really identify if someone's an eagle or a parrot or how do I really know what their four birds are without obviously like having them take the test, etc.? Is there an easy way that just in dialogue you can figure that out?
You can figure out people's styles very fast. So I'll model it for you, and we haven't practiced this, so you can see if you can guess what style am I. How about that? So I meet you at a networking event. I walk up to you and I say, "Hi there, nice to meet you, Merrick Rosenberg." What style do you think that is?
Eagle.
Right, you feel that eagle energy. How about this? "Hi, how are you? It's so nice to meet you, Merrick."
Dove.
Notice you feel the difference. "Hey,
Yep.
Great to meet you. So pumped to be here. Having an awesome day, Merrick Rosenberg."
Parrot Merrick.
Right? "Hi, nice to meet you, Merrick Rosenberg."
There's my owl.
Right? See the difference? There's an energy. The parrots have charisma and excitement. The eagles have that confidence. The dove, it's that soft connection. Owl, very formal, business-like, professional. Notice how fast you can read it. Once you start learning the styles and start looking for it, you will see it everywhere you go.
Totally. So that was a great exercise because like right there I nailed it. Just basically never rehearsed it before.
You passed.
Yes. Well, hopefully I did after all these trainings. But another way, and this is what also I have teaching, my franchise team and also my local team of coaches, when they're connecting with clients. And this was actually taught to us, but from a radiation perspective. So an eagle radiates intensity. A parrot radiates energy. A dove radiates kindness, and an owl doesn't radiate. Kind of like
That's exactly right.
So, like that. Aside from the introduction example, like now when I'm kind of surveying people, like that like the energy that someone radiates is also like a really good tell, and that's something that we've downloaded our coaches so that again they can pick up that personality style. But now, actually leading to the next point, and the biggest focus of the training is yes, knowing yourself and being self-aware, but it's also basically knowing the other person's style and talking with them. So can you talk about, that aspect of the training and really the big value that you provide teams, organizations, companies?
Yeah, the most important thing is you've got to be self-aware. But how is that self-awareness impacting others? And what I always tell people is you can't impose your style on the people around you. And we have this challenge. There's a great George Carlin quote. He said, "Everyone driving slower than me is an idiot. Everyone driving faster than me is a maniac." Because we think our way is the right way, and then we impose it on others. So, imagine you're giving feedback to somebody, and you are a parrot, and you're bursting with excitement, and you walk into that owl, up to that owl, and you say, "You were amazing. Energy, passion, enthusiasm, loved what you did." But the owl's like, "Well, specifically, what did you like?" That's not going to resonate with an owl. And flip that around. If you're an owl giving feedback to a parrot and you say, "I want to thank you for what you did on the project. Specifically, I want to highlight a few areas. In fact, I made a spreadsheet for you because if there's anything that motivates parrots, definitely spreadsheets. So let me walk you through the rows and the columns." The problem is, whose style do we give feedback in? Our own. And we impose it on others. Whose style do we sell in? Our own, and we impose it on others. Whose style do we try to motivate them in? Our own. And you can plug any word into that sentence that we communicate to people in our style. But what we really need to do is make sure we're not imposing our style on them. Think about, who am I talking to and what do they need in this moment? If you have somebody and they're a dove, soften your words. If you have someone who's an eagle, be direct and right to the point. You've got to understand who you're talking to and speak their language.
Totally. And just giving you a little backstory about me, because I'm high eagle and then secondary parrot, I lead with that intensity, that directness, that assertiveness. And then my mother, Donna, who's an incredible soul, she's a dove, right? And now I call her Mother Dove. Like, that's what my little nickname I've coined her since, kind of being ingrained in the Take Flight, learning experience. But it just kind of explains a lot. Like, I take a step back, and any of the clashes that we've had, it's because like I'm coming in eagle style and she's like Mother Dove, and then that style clashes, right? So just kind of providing some reinforcement that, what I've learned is I need to take a step back. Actually, when I'm talking to a mom or another dove, I kind of handle that conversation very differently than I'm talking with, a fellow executive, our CEO and co-host of, this particular podcast, Bedros. I can be more direct and assertive. So I think there's a lot of value in that, huh?
Yeah, think of the power of really understanding that. Imagine if that dove was a customer and now you are an eagle and you're very assertive. You go for the close. You're trying to close that deal right on the spot. And that dove just needs time to think. They need time to process. They want to understand. They want to feel that you care about them as an individual and not just making the sale. And that's the power of being able to read people quickly, that if you're talking to an eagle, you can say, all right, what do you think? Just ask them. If you're talking to a dove, you've got to ease them into it. And it's understanding, I have to think about who I'm talking to and how to speak their language.
Yeah, amazing. Speaking of which, you talk about sales training, and the other thought that came to me is leadership training. So with our locations, with our franchise, we introduced Take Flight. The first training in January of this year is 2021 in Miami, and that was the foundational kind of disc training. And then we've kind of built at that. A lot of our coaches and owners were able to kind of attend some of your workshops and get to train that way. And then we brought back one of your other presenters in our, I guess, a meeting in Vegas last month, our mastermind group, and basically it was showcasing the leadership training. And then on top of the leadership training, there's the sales training, and there's a few other trainings that you have. So really what I'm getting at is I would love to kind of get some insight and share with the audience the different types of trainings that you have, and really, the value and how they apply to different companies or organizations.
Yeah, most personality styles training is kind of like, hey, did you ever take this profile? Oh yeah, I did that. And it's like, but you got to recognize training's not an event. It's a process. You've got to reinforce it. I mean, it's like taking care of your body. It's not an event. It's how we think about how we are going to live in this world. And so that's what happens here with the birds. We have leadership training. And if there was a through line statement in that, it's you've got to create a culture for people that they will like, not just what you would like. You've got to treat your people the way they need to be treated, not just how you want to be treated. The sales training, if there was a through line through that class, imagine this statement. If you are selling someone and their style is different from yours, one of you is going to leave that interaction exhausted, and it better be you. Because one of you is going to have to flex in that interaction. Do you want it to be the customer? Do you want it to be your client? No. Is it tiring to flex? And if I'm an eagle, to be a dove for an hour while I'm talking about what we do? Yeah, it's tiring. But you know what? You're connecting to them. You're speaking their language. And so that's what really flows through all of our training. We have leadership training. It's all about how do you lead and treat people how they want to be treated. From a sales perspective, how do you use the birds to interact with clients and really treat them how they would want to be treated? And guess what? When they get their needs met, you get your needs met. You make the sale. So we have conflict management training. We have training for coaches to teach people how to coach and infuse the birds into their coaching interactions. We have innovation training, which teaches people how to innovate using the birds. It's really a whole ecosystem around using the bird styles throughout your life at everything you do in the workplace.
Yeah, amen to that. So speaking of which, and obviously the training is all around the birds, but what you just kind of mentioned dovetails in really the goal, which is really being the chameleon or flexing. So I would love for you to kind of share more of that. And the reason I bring this up is one of my dear friends, host of this particular podcast, CEO of our franchise Fit Body Bootcamp, he is just off the charts eagle. But actually, I mean, it makes sense, like in hindsight. But truth be told, he is I would say a genius at being the chameleon, because he can be soft when he needs to, he can be pensive when he needs to, he can be the show pony or the parrot if he needs to. So can you talk a little bit more about like the objective of the chameleon, and maybe even kind of talk about the book a little bit, because I know that's the
Sure.
essence of it, and just the value and really the big takeaways of the whole concept.
Yeah, the idea of being a chameleon is being adaptable and flexible in the moment to the situation that's at hand and to the person you're talking to. So let's bring it to life. I'll give you some real life examples here. Let's go back in time. I'm going to give you a few presidential examples. Take someone like Ronald Reagan, the great communicator. He had times where he stood in front of that wall in Berlin and said, "Tear down this wall." Pure eagle. The Challenger explodes. He talks in dove language. I still remember seeing those astronauts for the last time this morning. It was so dove. He would go on the campaign trail and he would share tons of statistics. He was a funny guy. I remember this one time he was standing in front of Independence Hall in Philadelphia, and people were kind of picking on him at the time. He was the oldest person to ever run for president. And in the middle of his talk, he just goes, I'm sorry. I'm just feeling a bit nostalgic. I remember the first time I stood in this spot. Ben Franklin and I were, he just would like throw this stuff out there. But what it showed was the great communicator could display all four styles. And here's the thing. Who do you appeal to when you display all four styles? Everybody. Everybody. Look, let's be, nonpartisan here. Bill Clinton, put politics aside. You watch him for 10 minutes. It's like a master class in public speaking. In 10 minutes, he will hit every single one of the styles. Once again, when you communicate in all four styles, you have that mass appeal. And that's what we're talking about. Imagine being a leader and being able to interact with every one of your employees, or a salesperson and being able to interact with whoever walks through those doors. The chameleon is about being flexible and adaptable and just tapping into the right style at the right time. And in the book, The Chameleon, I just wanted to make it fun. So it's 22 fables. Each fable teaches a different lesson of the four styles, kind of ripped from the pages of my life. I unabashedly stole from interactions between my wife and I and family members. But it's fun.
Oh, it's a ton of fun, and I was sharing this with you off film before the video got rolling. But my wife doesn't read a ton. She's a student of personal development and whatnot, but she listens to podcasts and a few other things. But she's not an avid reader, and she's doing this challenge called 75 Hard, where she has to do a couple workouts a day and read. And one of the books that she was reading is actually The Chameleon, and I feel she's finished about 2 or 3 weeks ago. But for a period of a month, I kid you not, Merrick, like every day or at least every other day, I would get a text while I'm at work being like, Bryce, and then she would share like the story, the fable, whatever, and how basically it applies so much to us, because I'm the eagle parrot and then she's actually the quite opposite. She's the dove owl, and it just explains so much. I think you just did an incredible job. I want to give you a little acknowledgement there.
Oh, thank you. Well, that was the hope, that you could see yourself in the stories, and that in these fun little stories about birds, you see that's me, or I do that, or, that's always bothered me. Why is that bothering me? They're just being who they are. I need to let go of all this judgment and accept people around me for who they are, and just stop judging them. And it just adds that level of acceptance when you get rid of judgment.
Yeah, amen. Okay, so that all said, we're just like so stoked about the birds. And again, it's been just so impactful for me, for my family, for our organization, for my coaches and trainers across the board. But playing the devil's advocate, and I'm sure like in these training particular sessions, you're going to have people that don't connect, or, maybe are having a hard time connecting. What would you say is the biggest challenge when you're presenting this content information, to people that for whatever reason are just having a hard time implementing it? Can you kind of maybe share some examples or insights?
Yeah, the bigger challenge is that they'll walk in skeptical. I've done these things before. I've done personality assessments. They're fun, but what do you do with it? And I think what our challenge is, and I think we overcome it pretty quickly, is to show them, yes, we know we've all done these personality assessments, whether it's what Game of Thrones character you are or an official profile that is validated and statistically reliable. But, so many of those get put in a drawer. So I encounter that skepticism and I get it. I think that what we find is once they start learning about the birds, they realize this isn't about a profile. It's not about a report. It's not about a graph. It's about who are you and how do you impact the people in your life? And do I accept them for being who they are, or am I judging them? And once you start learning the styles, it just becomes fun. And I think people very quickly go from what I think of as prisoners, like I'm here because somebody made me show up to this thing, to participants. It's very rarely does anybody remain a prisoner, like somebody made me come to this. Once you start learning about the profiles and the birds, I think, if there is any topic that is infinitely interesting, it's ourselves. So I think very quickly people want to learn about it.
Totally. And that's even for my local team. It was funny because we did the training for our franchise in January. Then we did extended training a couple months later at our headquarters. And then for my locations, because I have 2 gyms in Southern California, Orange County, we did the team training for our locations as well. And overall, it was extremely well received, as you would imagine. The first 10 minutes, though, I could see a couple coaches kind of, a little skeptical and all that. And then, of course, as the training continued, and then you've developed a great system where not only you're just educating and teaching, but you're also, doing activities and workshops, and in my experience, working with people, especially coaches, but probably human nature to begin with. When you give them experiential learning by kind of doing workshops and different activities, it just makes all the difference, and the knowledge is retained a lot more.
Yeah, I think what happens is, just from a physiological perspective, when we're having fun, all those endorphins get released, and it makes it exciting for us because our brain is active. And then when those endorphins get released in the brain, it's like what lubricates the brain. All that knowledge gets written to the hard drive. When it's just purely cognitive knowledge, it goes in one ear and out the other. But when it's fun, exciting, and people are laughing, we remember emotional experiences better than we remember cognitive experiences. So just make it fun, make it engaging. It's what you do. You bring people in, you engage them, you get people excited about what they can do and what they can accomplish. It's not just handing them fact sheets and think this is going to change somebody's life. They've got to buy in, and that's what we do too. We make it exciting and engaging.
And that's so important, especially for our audience being interested in the fitness space. And this is what we teach our owners all the time. Instead of entertainment, we do entertrainment, and because that's really what makes it fun and keeps people coming back. Because let's face it, everyone knows they should work out and eat clean, but very few people actually in the grand scheme of things do. But that's our job, duty, responsibility to kind of make that aspect fun. And that's really the same way with your organization you've done in spades. Now, kind of transitioning off that point, I'm curious why the average company, and kind of talking a little bit more about Take Flight Learning, why does the average company seek you? And the reason I ask is, for us, it didn't even really occur to us that, hey, we should be proactively seeking out personality training. Truth be told, one of a dear friend of mine, who's one of the most successful owners in the Fit Body Bootcamp brand, his name's Stephen Hadley in Daphne, Alabama. He did the training, I would say, like 18 months ago, and just had an incredible response with it, with his team, awareness, connectivity, etc. And then, of course, word of mouth marketing is the best one. So he kind of put this to myself and then fellow Vice President Matt's ear. And then before you know it, we basically hired the company and hired your training. But I'm curious why the average company, kind of what their pain point is. Why are they coming to look for you? And yeah, just give a little insight there if you'd be so kind.
What's interesting is, when we were, as Team Builders Plus, running team building programs, we had 2 different types of clients. One that was, we just want to have a fun day. And the other was, we have a dysfunctional team and we need to fix it. And that's really our 2 clients now. Although, it's we have issues, we need to fix our team dynamics, we need to address our culture and create a better work environment. But overwhelmingly, more and more, our clients are the proactive companies who say, we want to create a great culture. We know that culture eats strategy for breakfast. That if we have a great place, people will love working here, they will stay here, they provide that discretionary effort. If they have that 9-to-5 job, they don't just leave at 4:59, they're packing their desk. It's like when people love what they do and they love the culture, they will do anything for that organization and they stay. And a lot of companies are being so much more proactive than they were 20 or 30 years ago. And a lot of our clients are just trying to create great cultures for their people. And they realize that if you can teach managers how to be better managers, if you can teach people how to communicate to each other, you create a great culture. So I love that. Like going into a company that's just proactively trying to create a great environment. I mean, you can't beat that. It's amazing.
Totally. Now, I do have a question on the continued training. How do you continue to integrate this? Because what you mentioned, training is not just one and done, it's an ongoing situation. So the reason I ask is one, for ideas for our company to continue to do a good job, but we've done some things already. As an example, we run these elite trainings for all of our coaches and owners a few times a year. So my brother Barrett, who's now becoming the director of coaching and profitability for our franchise, both him and I and our CEO, a few times a year kind of run trainings, and we're actually incorporating, now that we've gotten certified, the DISC training, the profile, the personality training within our trainings. We also have done, again, the additional initial DISC, then the leadership training, but with Take Flight. Also now with all of our group Zoom calls, because obviously the world going virtual with COVID, et cetera, one of the things that we ask all of our coaches or owners who are going to join the line is they rename themselves on Zoom, just their first name and their bird pairings. So just trying different ways to kind of keep this front of mind, because the concept's so important, right, and pertinent. So from your perspective, what are some additional ways, not only like understanding the content, which is great opportunity and training it provide, but how do you keep this within the organization?
It's a matter, you're exactly right. It's a matter of keeping it alive. You have a staff meeting and you say, the ticket for admission for that meeting is everybody bring a story of how you've seen the styles play out this week. So one person's is dealing with a client and they're like, okay, I'm an owl, this person was a parrot. Here's what I said, and then I realized, I'm imposing my parrot on them, and then I shifted. So even just keeping it alive by sharing stories, because you see yourself in the stories, and then there's lessons for everybody in one of those stories. It's just the idea of talking about it and bringing it up, not just as a one-time, we went to a training program and that's it. It's for me, it's why we created the additional training programs, that it's not just an event. It has to be something that is kept alive. And so the more you keep talking about it, we have companies who have painted walls with the birds on them just to keep it alive. I mean, it's just fantastic. We have I have them here, like little desktop birds that people put out, I mean, it's just like it's sitting on their desk. You walk in and you see this guy and you're like, all right, they're a parrot. Got it. So it's just the little visual elements of keeping it front and center, but it's keeping it part of the conversation, and it's bringing it into those coaching interactions. It's bringing it into meetings and sharing how you keep using it.
Nice. My next question actually is diving into your organization, where Take Flight is going with your future trainings and the vision of your company. But before I do hit that question, you just kind of jogged my memory when you talked about the visualization in those cards. When I was talking with my brother Barrett, kind of after we got certified, through the training, and now we can kind of teach DISC, et cetera, within the Take Flight learning, et cetera, or framework. The biggest accolade he said, he's like, yes, Merrick and the team have done an incredible job of the, pairing the birds, et cetera. But one thing they did an exceptionally well job is actually the cartoons, like the visualizations of the birds, because you've really done a good job of like that parrot. I'm looking over your head now. It's just like pops, right? The eagle is standing up.
He's hanging out with me.
So I wanted to give you a little accolades on that, but I think that's also like a very important piece of the equation, that visualization that you talked about.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we're going. Is we just created a whole set of these same 4 birds, but it's the younger version. It's hilarious to see them. You turn to an artist and say, all right, we want like a kid bird about 8 to 12. And then you look at it and you go, yeah, that bird's about 8 to 12. And one of the things we're doing is I want to impact the world by teaching this to children. And we just created a kid's profile where the kid takes the assessment, and they get a report that says, here is your superpower. Here is you. Here's what makes you special as a kid. But there's another section for parents. How do you parent that child given their style? And there's another section for teachers and coaches. How do you teach or coach this child? What do they need from you? So I'm so excited about that. And it goes with a new book that's going to be coming out later this year called Which Bird Are You? Which is a fun fable for kids. So it's a kid's book. Teaching the stories to children.
Did you offer that as well?
Yeah. I wrote that this summer. It was a pandemic project. I said, I am coming out of this with something awesome. This pandemic is not kicking my butt. When I come out of it, I'm going to have something new and exciting. So created the kids profile, wrote a children's book. So, hey, turning lemons into lemonade.
Love it, man. That's the parrot in you for sure. That said, and actually brought up a good point, and just giving you also visibility, but also using it or getting insight on a question I had, because this has been so impactful, with our owners and leaders and coaches, fitness coaches throughout our brand. An idea that Barrett and I were talking about would be also our clients, right? Because our clients, their moms, their parents, their coworkers, they have colleagues, et cetera. And we're actually thinking of, executing a little workshop now that we're certified through your certification,
right.
Not only to our coaches, which we've already done through the assistance of you and your company, but also to delivering that workshop to, our clients who can gain a lot of value. So you talked about the kids program. Before you touch on that, with the current certification, what would you say is the youngest age that someone could kind of go through the disc and really get value from it?
I've had people say, you can sit with an 8 to 12-year-old and just really help them understand their style. I taught the birds to my kids when they were 6, and they got it. They absolutely. Oh, yeah. I can remember they were 6 years old. We'd go to a restaurant. The server takes our drink order, and they're like, "Okay, he's an eagle. All right, she was a parrot." I mean, in seconds, kids absolutely get it. And then the funny thing is, at that time I wasn't quite using the birds yet. I was still using letters. They hadn't flown into my existence. So I was using SpongeBob, and I'm teaching the kids, like, see, SpongeBob's the parrot, Mr. Krabs is the eagle, Squidward's an owl, Patrick's a dove. I was trying to teach it to them because I was still using letters back then. And I knew I needed something visual even then. And the kids just absolutely get style. So even 6 years old, you can teach kids about themselves and how they interact with their friends and their teachers and their parents.
Beautiful. Well, on that note too, the relationships, and we were talking off camera on this, but like I said, I'm an eagle parrot, high eagle secondary parrot, and then my wife Tatiana, the exact opposite actually. And there's a saying, opposites attract, which I do think to some extent is true, but she's high dove and then also a secondary owl. I was curious, in your relationship, do you have that correlation, or what do you see aside from work relationships, but just in marriages and whatnot? Do you see a correlation there as well from your experience?
Yeah, not only do I see a correlation, I'm a parrot eagle. My wife is an owl dove. But the statistics, the data says that's true. I saw a study, University of Iowa, 86% of the time we are attracted to our personality opposite. Eagles and doves get married most often. Parrots and owls get married most often. I'd say happily married, just happen to be married. You got that? We will need maybe more than, a podcast to go to that one. Yeah. But it's true. It is absolutely true. The opposites do attract, and if you may remember in the Chameleon, I have a fable about that. And what I say is, don't think of it as opposites. Think of them as complements, that we complement each other. My wife and I, when we got married, I remember she had looked at me and she said, this year will be our 30th anniversary. And so she looked at me and she said,
congrats.
Yeah, we're coming up in a few weeks. It's crazy. I'm not sure where that time went. But when we didn't know the styles when we got married. I didn't know about these letters or birds. And she looked at me and she's the owl, I'm the parrot, and she said, "Where's your checkbook?" And I handed her the checkbook, and she said, "No, not the checks. The register where you write it all down." And I looked at her and I'm like, "Got that all right here." And she goes, "No, seriously, where is it?" I'm like, "Seriously, it's all right." And she's like, "You do know banks make mistakes, right? You do know this." And I looked at her and I said, "I'm a parrot, right? Hey, banks make mistakes, but in the course of my life, they'll make mistakes against me. They'll make mistakes for me. In the end, it'll all even out. I won't have a moment of stress my entire life." Haven't written a check in about 30 years. So, yeah. But you know what? At that, when we didn't understand the styles, she looked at that and judged that as, why can't he do that? That's easy for me. Why can't he do it? And now she says, look, he's the parrot. I'm an owl. Even though I have an M.B.A. in business, she's a psychologist who handles our checking account. The owl, put aside education, the owl does it. But we go to buy a car, and as an owl dove, that's very stressful for her. So I do all the talking, and as a parrot eagle, kind of fun. It's exciting. I'm going to get a good deal. I'm going to bargain. It's going to be a great day. When we first got our very first car, I looked at her. I'm like, why can't you just tell them what you want? Bargain. Couldn't do it. Now I say, Okay, so I bargained for the car. You do the checkbook. We find roles that we each can do well. We complement each other. We don't judge each other. And that's the power of a healthy relationship, is that you understand each other and what your natural gifts are and what you bring to that relationship. You fell in love because you're opposite and different. Now don't try to change them into the best version of you. And that's what happens all the time.
So true, and it speaks to me in so many levels. And kind of taking that from a family perspective and even transitioning to a business perspective, which is what I teach actually our franchisees now. And I kind of had this aha when I went to the last training. And again, this is just my terminology using the birds or my vision on it, but I say the eagle creates the opportunity because they're the one bringing it down the wall, creating the opportunity for the company. The parrot and the dove, they create the revenue, because in the fitness business, the revenue is about the people business, creating the relationships, because that's super important. And the owls in our organization, they take the revenue and they create profit, because they're the ones who make sure that the efficiency of the organization and the checkbook balance, et cetera. And you need all of them. And there was a time where I only was heavily on the one side, not the other, but you really need all basically personality styles and characteristics to run a successful family, relationships, or business. So I just love this stuff so much, as you can see, Merrick.
Yeah, and what you find is that when we first start a company, we think, well, I know what my style is, and I'm driving success. I want more people like me. No, you don't. What you have to do is staff your weakness. You need to bring people in who are different from you, who complement you, just like you would in a personal relationship, that bring something totally different to the equation and add that level of value. And then when you hire them because they're different, don't try to change them into you. Which is what happens a lot. We hired them because they brought this skill, and then we say, no, we don't do that here. Here's how we do it, and we try to change them. No. Honor who they are. Respect the fact that they're different. They bring you something different. For example, the owls keep the parrots safe. The doves make sure that people are spoken to in a very compassionate, caring way. The eagles make sure those doves also focus on the bottom line and get results. The parrots make sure those owls have some fun and spontaneity. So we all bring something to the mix, and we just have to value it.
Yeah, amen. And tying this to me, and I guess for our audience there, and just giving you insight for me as a gym owner, maybe some of you can relate, but my owl is actually very low. So, from that efficiency perspective, but what I've now realized, and sometimes, the saying or the viewpoint could be like a little stick in the mud, because owls are always like analyzing things, etc. What I've come to realize is, because I'm so weak in terms of like the owl kind of focus or style, that some of my best teammates that just drive the most value are owls, because they can kind of keep me in check and make sure that all runs as it should. So, that
right.
Complementation is really the whole message, I think, that we're really trying to articulate here.
Absolutely. It's like they're not poking holes in ideas to make the boat sink. They're poking holes to say, hey, if I poke all these holes and it still floats, this is good.
Okay.
And can you imagine existing today if you would only hired people like you?
Ooh.
It just doesn't work. We need all the styles.
Yeah. And what I've also realized too, because my vice president and my wife for my local locations are both very high owl. But what I've realized is, before, when they're like questioning me why and everything, at first I took it as like, why are you raining on my parade? This is like awesome, this vision, right? But then I realized that's just their style. But the good news is, now when I present an idea, I have facts, I have data, I have support it. And when I present that to them, it's literally like easy street. Okay, good to go. But without that, it became such a big chore.
Absolutely. And you also can't expect that owl to be bursting with enthusiasm. I had an idea once, and I walked into someone who works for me, he's an owl, and I was like, this is big. This is game changer big. And I shared the idea with him, and he looked at me and he goes, that's not the worst idea I've ever heard. It's like the best. This is like the best idea. I went down the hall, found a parrot who had nothing to do with it, and I told her, and she was like, oh my God. And I'm like, I know. I needed parrot love. I was just like, I understood it, and it made me laugh, but I'm like, I still need parrot energy. But I wasn't annoyed by the fact that he wasn't excited about it, because I understand that's how he thinks. He's not going to get excited until he really thinks this through, processes it, asks questions. Then he'll get excited. But you know what? I need that in him, because he, as I said earlier, he keeps me safe. He's going to ask those questions. I previously would have thought of it as a buzzkill. Now I see it as, thank God he's here. He's keeping me safe.
Value, 100%. Couldn't agree with you more. Well, that is amazing and a huge knowledge zone of, or a knowledge bomb, if you will, that hopefully our audience here is really sinking in. Now, that all said, Merrick, you've been so gracious with your time, and I know you're a busy CEO running companies, so I want to transition with the last little bit of time I have with you to the lightning round to be able to provide our audience with some big high-hitting knowledge bombs. Does that work for you? On board?
I am ready. As a parrot eagle, sure. What could happen?
Beautiful. First and foremost, what would you say is your zone of genius?
I think it's creativity. It's just not limiting myself to what is and looking to what could be.
Yeah, beautiful. Next up, what is the one thing that you are most passionate about today and why?
It's just always been about reducing drama in people's lives and creating great relationships. I live in a sense in corporate America and going into companies, but the reality is more people come up to me afterwards and ask me questions about their spouse and their kids. And it's about helping people to create healthy relationships in their lives and just decrease all that drama and stress that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, amen. Not only you, but your whole company is in the business of giving great advice and coaching, to your clients. What would you say is the best piece of advice or coaching that you've ever received?
I think that for me, it's kind of like the theme that I teach all the time, which is use your strengths, but just don't overuse your strengths. And the example of that is you take that eagle and they're confident and direct, but if you dial that up too much, you become aggressive and blunt and insensitive. Mm-hmm. You take the parrot and they're optimistic. You dial it up too much, they're unrealistic. And I think that's true for all of these styles. You've got to use your strengths, but keep them at a healthy level. Don't overuse them or else they get in your way.
Yeah, beautiful. Next up, being a CEO of a very, very successful company that received a lot of accolades, I'm sure daily habits and rituals are a really big part of your life. What would you say is one habit that you've picked up over the years that's really been beneficial or very impactful in your success that you can share with our audience?
I've always loved the never touch the same thing twice. I try to do that in everything I do. If I walk in and something needs to be put away in my home, I don't just put it down on the counter and I'll put it away later. I put it away now. If I open up an email and someone has a question, I don't say, "Oh, that's interesting. I'll answer that later." If I'm seeing it right now, I handle it right now. I just try not to touch it twice.
Easier said than done, but that is gold. Next up, I always say leaders are readers, and you certainly are one of them, especially being an author. And we've talked about some of your books, so certainly a great way for you to kind of plug on that. But would love one of your best book recommendations for Fitness Franchise Nation, and why is that?
I love Marshall Goldsmith's book, "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," and he talks about, look, you got to this place, and that's fantastic, but you want to get to the next level. You have to change how you're thinking. That the thinking that got you to this level is not the same thinking that gets you to the next level. And I just love that idea. It's a constantly, when you think you've arrived, that's just where you are right now. Then when you get there, you're going to be like, I made it. Nope. That was just a step to the next place. And I love that idea. What got you here won't get you there.
Awesome. All right, Merrick, this has been incredible. And like I said, I'm just so pumped, and this has been a lot of fun for me and for us and our audience. I've gotten a lot of value from you. What would be one last piece of wisdom or knowledge bomb that you want to basically impart on our audience before we shoot today?
I would say don't impose your personality on others. Honor people for who they are, and don't impose your style on them, trying to turn them into the highest version of you. Let them be the highest version of who they are. Don't shine your light so bright that it drowns them out. Let them shine their light.
Well said, my friend. Well, again, this has been a pleasure. Super grateful. Before we shoot for today, would love to give our audience a way to connect with you. So what would be the best way they can connect with you?
If you go to takeflightlearning.com, you can see all the different training programs that we have and assessments that we offer, and learn how to bring this into your world.
Beautiful. Merrick, this has been a ton of fun. And before we shoot today, I just want to take a second to acknowledge you. Like I said, this is really exciting for me because both myself and my team, my leadership team, has been working with your organization for the last going on 6 months now. And we've just literally gotten so much value from a self-awareness, from a training perspective, from a connectivity perspective, from a relation perspective. You've added so much value to my life and my team and brand's life. So I just want to take a second to acknowledge you for that. Thank you so much for being on the show, and our audience really appreciates you as well.
Thank you so much.
You got it. And friends, hopefully you enjoyed this episode, which was incredible. As always, go ahead and please like and subscribe on YouTube, and then please write an awesome review on iTunes. That would mean a lot to us and would also enable us to be able to produce and keep producing this content for free, which is the name of the game here. So aside from that, that's all for today. Have a great rest of the day, and talk to you soon. Thank you.